Hi guys, it's Lee from Andertons,
And Chris from Guitarist.
and we're here at Namm 2015 with Rick, who's Fender's product development manager for their amplification division. And today, Rick is telling us about a new, well, sort of a modification to the very popular hot rod Deville, which has been done for a little-known artist called Mike Landau. Rick in his part-time is also a stunt double for Mike Landau, hence the fact that he's so good on the guitar. But anyway, tell us about the amp.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a part of the hot rod line. Hot rods for Fender have obviously been one of the biggest selling amps of all time. They're on backstages around the world, and they're kind of the go-to amp for anyone that's touring and they need a great sounding amp. So Michael Landau, who many know as a guitarist, always impeccable tone, always has. He changes a pedal and everyone wants to change to that pedal. He's one of those kind of guys. I mean, he's on thousands of albums. So we knew that he was using the hot rod Devilles, and we decided to, we wanted to work with him, and we found out the things that he liked and some modifications that he wanted to do to this. What we ended up doing is having an amp that was far more tonally pure, because what he likes to use the amp for is as his canvas, and he uses the pedals as his brushes. So having a great, big, bold, clean tone was what he was really interested in. So as opposed to having an overdrive circuit in this amplifier, we've actually removed that. And so now it has two different volumes, okay? So you can set those to different volumes if you want to boost the sound. And then it has a boost on the second channel so that you get even a little bit more gain. So though this amp doesn't have an overdrive, it will start to distort as you turn it up, and with the boost, it'll actually take it into the next level. The other thing that he loved were Celestion V-type speakers.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Vintage 30s or?
No. They were actually a speaker that Celestion developed that we were one of the first companies to use. Very British flavored, kind of a green back flavor.
Nice.
We started with the 68 Customs. People really liked those speakers. We sent those to him. He said, "Wow, I love the way these sound." So that was really it, changing those things, making it more tonally pure. We did put a nice leather handle on there.
I noticed that.
Yeah,
I had to
little touches. It does have a little logo in the bottom there, bottom left corner.
Yes, you won't be able to see that, because it's just down here.
But it's it's one of those things where, as opposed to being a signature amp, it's more about being inspired by. Because he wanted it to be something that players would feel comfortable using, not just they were trying to mimic his tone, but get a great tone. So it's all those little features. It has a great effects loop, which is great for pedals. That's obviously, when I was using the overdrive, that's something that he does, is uses the clean and then uses pedals with that. And all those things, make for a really great sounding Fender bold clean. and then perfect for pedals, which we know everyone loves.
I think it's interesting. Like one of the things that we were saying earlier was that you know, probably a lot of people would assume that a player like Landau would use some kind of ridiculously rare $40,000 amplifier, but in fact, you know, it's something that's really affordable that, you know, that anybody can probably pick up and use.
Yeah, I think the thing about that is by removing some of the circuitry, a lot of people believe that having a simpler tone circuit increases the tone of the amp. I'm not against that. I think that happens often. People love Fender Tweed Deluxe's really simple circuit. There's something to that. Maybe it's the clarity. But to your point, we know that he has, you know, very expensive boutique amps, and we know that people are always following those kind of things, trying to get those tones. And that is what is so great, is that here's something that, yes, people can buy, anyone can buy. It's not a luxury boutique item. It's a great crafted quality amp that's very affordable to players on pretty much any budget. Yep. And they're going to get that bold sound. And yeah, it does come down to his hands a bit too. Let's not kid ourselves. But having, you know, the right pedals in this, it's like you can pretty much play almost any style of music, and he does.
Can you take us through? So you guys over there, you can't see here, but as Rick was just explaining, 2 volumes and a boost rather than the traditional sort of, you know, hot rod style preamp. Can you just, we've got the volume 1 set at about 2 and volume 2 set at about 3, so we're kind of keeping the lid on this a little bit for the video, but can you just demonstrate the kind of relative sort of changes, and particularly when the boost kicks in?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're starting with the bass tone on volume 1. So using the humbucker, so it's got a little bit of beef to it. I'm going to switch over to volume 2 now. That's up at 3 o'clock. Very nice. Then if you want to take that a little bit further with the boost, we're going to turn that on. So now you're going to get a little bit of grit to that.
It's pretty loud.
It's
loud.
That was no pedals, by the way. That's just the amp doing that.
Yeah, it is a tube amp. It's like you turn it up and it will start to naturally distort like the classic Fender amps of old.
Yeah. Now if you want the Landau modded Deville, it's only going to be in the 212 version, isn't it? Not the 410.
Yes, we're starting with that. Yeah.
And not, unless things change, in the deluxe either. So no, great sounding amplifier. So you guys are probably wondering as well, what is this amazing axe that Rick is playing here? Well, Rick's brought a colleague with him to tell us all about that. So we're going to say thank you very much for Rick for coming in now, and we're going to welcome Al. Here he comes.
Okay, so this is Al from Fender, and he's the product development manager for electric guitars, and he's here with the standard HSS Shawbucker. So would you like to just talk us through the tweaks, really? That'd be cool.
Absolutely. Well, as you well know, the American Standard Series is really the anchor of our product line. It's our flagship model. It represents everything Fender, all the iconic tones, et cetera, et cetera. So for this year, what we've done is taken that iconic American Standard platform of the HSS, and we've updated it with this brand new Shawbucker pickup. And there's one other little secret about it too that I'll just describe to you later. But basically, let's start with talking about Tim Shaw. Tim Shaw is a man who's worked for Fender for a couple decades. He is kind of a guru in the pickup world. You may have seen people selling their instruments on eBay and mention it has the Shaw pickups in it. And so he is a guy that has been researching the original pickup design that Seth Lover invented back in the mid-50s. And based on that research, he came up with some very well-respected humbucker designs. And what he's done for us is recreated that design with some new twists, okay? So the Shawbucker is actually kind of a throwback to that mid-50s style pickup. Alnico 2 magnets, enamel wire. The resistance is just a shade under 8K, so it's kind of medium output. But there's some other special qualities, like they're not potted. Okay, and Tim's recipe kind of allows the humbucker to breathe. It gives you this really beautiful, warm, organic, breathy tone that really has a fine quality to it. You can really tell the difference. The fact that it's not potted, it's kind of more like a sports car versus a sedan. It can give you controlled feedback, and you kind of have to work a little bit to control the feedback, and you know, versus a sedan where it's just a nice, comfy ride. This is kind of a real sports car kind of a pickup, and it's just a very beautiful note-to-note, string-to-string clarity, medium output, warmth, the notes bloom. Obviously Rick's playing demonstrated all that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of answered pretty much all the things I was going to say, because I noticed while Rick was playing, it wasn't the tip when he left it on the clean sound of the amp and went to the humbucker. It wasn't that sort of like fierce, horrible kind of, you know. It was very usable,
exactly,
warm sounding, sort of vintagey kind of vibe. I'm interested in the sort of the reasoning behind not potting the pickup, because you would normally sort of associate. You would normally associate a good pickup with being potted specifically to stop it being too microphonic.
Right.
So what's the sort of the vibe here? Just, you know, to encourage feedback, sort of.
Well, not necessarily. That's a very good question. The original design, actually, the Seth Lover design was not potted. So the original, mid 50s style humbuckers were not potted at all. So we're kind of being true to that design. What that does is it actually gives you a little bit more of that warmth and that bloom that you said you noticed in Rick's playing. That's an incremental but noticeable percentage of warmth, bloom, that kind of thing, is afforded by not potting the pickup. An after effect happens to be that you can get feedback if you want it, especially with an overdrive or distortion on, and you can control it very well. So it's more of it's a very musical pickup. So it doesn't really become microphonic, but it does allow you to have this very musical, controllable feedback. So it wasn't necessarily for the feedback that we didn't pot it, but more being true to the original design and adding that little incremental warmth and bloom.
I guess the biggest reason to pot pickups anyway, if they've got covers, because it's a lot of the time just the air and the vibration with the covers that gives you the microphonics. So if they're uncovered, then you can kind of get away with it, you know.
Correct. And the way that we wind them today, it's very precise, where the winds are stacked nice and tight and evenly. So that helps avoid, microphonics is caused sometimes by the wiring becoming loose. And the way we construct these, that typically won't happen. So potting is almost not necessary.
Are we going to see this pickup on any other guitars in the Fender range?
Very good question. We are outfitting all the HSS models in the American Standard line and the American Deluxe line. So we have an American Deluxe Stratocaster HSS Shawbucker and an American Standard HSS Shawbucker.
Is there an HSH coming as well?
Not in the works yet.
Right, okay. No problem.
But there is one other key feature about the American Standard HSS with Shawbucker that I'd like to mention, if you don't mind, which is built into the volume knob. As you know, typically people that use humbuckers use 500K pots.
Yep.
People that use single coils use 250K pots. So with an HSS, there's always a compromise, because if you put in a 500K pot to accompany the humbucker, the single coils may be too bright. And conversely, if you put a 250K in to accompany the single coils, the humbucker might not be bright enough. Well, we've, in the American Standard HSS Shawbucker, we've put a very clever stacked pot that allows you to have a 500K pot when you're using the humbucker, and when you switch to the single coils, it switches automatically to a 250K pot. So this is kind of bridging that great compromise between 500 and 250K pots on an HSS.
And presumably when you're on position 2, it splits this anyway, does it? So you're still just using
Actually, this is the full humbucker in position 2.
So which pot does it use?
And it's using the 500.
I see. I thought I'd try and catch you out. Damn, he knows all the answers.
I guess what that does, though, it kind of solves a lot of the problems that, if you take a sort of a typical Strat and retrofit it with a humbucker, and you've got the compromises with the rating of the parts, and a normal kind of retrofit humbucker is a little bit of a blunt instrument usually in a Strat. Sometimes it's kind of unsubtle, and you don't it's great at that one thing and that kind of big 80s rock sound, but as we heard, it's a much more subtle voice. I think.
Yeah, that's one of the things about Tim's design, is that it being musical was one of the major things we wanted to capture. And Fender typically being known as a single coil company, we've made many humbuckers in the past that sound great, but this is kind of a humbucker designed by a guy who's a humbucker guru.
And I was going to say, prior to working for Fender, he was a Gibson guy, wasn't he? So he's obviously had a huge career in kind of pickup manufacturing and design.
Absolutely.
So what he doesn't know about pickups presumably isn't worth knowing.